Okay, good evening. I've managed to sneak my way into part of the medical school of Paris near the Sorbonne University. It's late evening and I'm stood in front of the Campus des Cordeliers. I don't know if you can see that, which is the name of one of the parts of the university. It's one of the only indications around here that this is also the site of the Cordeliers Club, which met at least twice a week after 1789 in Paris. And the Cordeliers were a group comprised of people from the Cordeliers section of Paris, which was one of the poorer sections. There were groups like this that sprung up all over the city after 1789, but it was the poorer sections that provided the more radical viewpoint on where the revolution should go next. And at the Cordeliers Club in particular, there was no membership fee, and people could just turn up and listen to guys like Danton and Marat, Desmoulins, the sort of most vocal and powerful rhetorical speakers of the whole revolution. They could just come along and they could participate, and that, I think, is why the revolution is so transformative. So this dark building behind me that I'm trying to show you is part of the old site where they used to meet. It was basically an old church. A lot of the revolutionary clubs met in disused monastic buildings and churches because they were just like the most obvious. They were just easy to kind of to take over, basically, because they were empty. But it's just, again, one of these buildings where it's gone now. So, you know, the major part of the Cordeliers Club has been destroyed. It's actually destroyed in 1794 following the executions of Desmoulins and Danton by Robespierre, their old colleague who had been dominant, or was dominant, at the Jacobin Club. So Robespierre basically destroys the sections, he destroys the clubs because they start to challenge the central government provided by the terror. And this is where, of course, the revolution is just sort of eating itself, turning in on itself. And so I think, again, this is why it's a tricky one to memorialise. How do you celebrate the Cordeliers Club, even though in some respects it epitomises everything that the revolution holds dear, and it celebrates the rights of man and about the right of ordinary men to participate in politics. But the cost of this kind of newfound political freedom is the conflict between the revolutionaries themselves in defining what the revolution is. And that's why when I come to this amazing historical site, there's only a kind of modern day name of a medical school, section of medical school, that still denotes what its real historical significance is. Just over the street is where Marat, one of the other key figures at the Cordeliers Club, was stabbed to death in his bath by Charlotte Corday. And Marat is another guy who people don't quite know now how to regard. He's a great revolutionary writer. He's read by certainly the people at the Cordeliers Club would have loved Marat, and they would have seen him as their champion. But he's also a very violent writer, and he calls on the sections in particular to use violence against the so-called enemies of the revolution at almost every turn. And as the revolution then turns in on itself, following Marat's death, the legacy of his writing doesn't seem particularly benevolent, and so again it's kind of disappeared. The only place where you can find, I suppose, the more violent legacy of the revolution is in the Commune of 1871 and the final resistance in the days of May of 1871. And these are guys who see themselves as the new personifications of Danton and or certainly of Marat, perhaps not so much Robespierre, but that's a revolution that I think is regarded more positively by Parisians, but not least because it fails. And the great difficulty of the revolution that's led by Danton and Robespierre, and that eventually consumes both of them, the great difficulty of that is actually, it lies in its success. And the fact that for 4 or 5 years it really did seek to build a new Paris and a new France with all the destructive consequences that involved. Okay, good night.